Michigan, 8 days after a big snowstorm. A deer hunter went out for his regular hunt. Everything seemed normal until he tripped over something and fell face first into the snow. At first, the hunter thought it was just a fallen tree branch. But when he looked again, he saw something horrible. Police were called right away. They found a body almost completely covered by snow. Within an hour, they figured out who it was, 19-year-old Christina Castiglioni. She had been missing for 10 days. At first, everyone thought this was just a regular murder case. But then, a police officer at the Livingston County Sheriff's Office noticed something strange. This case seemed connected to another case from 2 years earlier. A couple's black Labrador dog had found the body of a teenage girl named Kimberly Luiselle. She was curled up in some bushes. Both cases were really similar in scary ways. Both girls had been raped and strangled. Both were last seen getting into a car with a man. Could this really be just a coincidence? 2 deaths, 2 years apart, 2 young women left in the same place and in the same way. For years, these deaths were just old cases sitting in file cabinets. But now a new clue had appeared. This clue could finally help catch the killer. After 40 years, a secret hidden in the physical evidence finally had something to say. Before diving into the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to stay updated with the latest stories. The old lights in Detective Thomas Riley's cold case office buzzed quietly. The room felt gloomy, full of questions that had never been answered. Dust floated in the one beam of afternoon sunlight that came through the dirty window. The light shined on stacks of file boxes. Each box held forgotten hopes. Riley's face showed the signs of many long nights and lots of coffee. He stared at the faded photographs pinned above his desk. Kimberly Luiselle, then Christina Castiglioni. Their young faces were frozen forever in old photos from the early 1980s. 40 years, and the truth had escaped them. A dangerous killer's shadow had stretched across generations. It was like acid slowly eating away at the heart of Michigan. Riley had inherited these unsolved cases. He got them not just from the files, but from the very air of the Livingston County Sheriff's Department. He had been a new police officer when these cases had already grown cold. Back then, he listened to the tired sighs of older detectives and the frustrated whispers about a serial killer no one could catch. Now, 25 years into his own career, the faces of Kimberly and Christina felt as personal as family. He knew their dreams, their last known movements, and the heartbreaking pleas of their parents. He knew the sadness that had settled over South Lyon and Redford, like a dark cloud that refused to go away. He was the last hope for families whose own hopes had long since dried up. He looked at his watch. 2:47 p.m. He was expecting a call. A call he'd dreamed of, feared, and carefully planned for over the last year. Christina's case had received money for advanced DNA testing through Season of Justice. This was a non-profit organization that helps solve forgotten crimes. The samples, tiny pieces of evidence from a crime scene 40 years old, had been sent to Othram Inc., a private forensic laboratory in Texas. They were known for their cutting-edge forensic genetic genealogy. It was a long shot, like throwing a football across a huge empty field. But it was the only shot left. The phone rang. The sound broke the silence in the quiet room. Riley's hand, usually steady, shook a little as he picked up the phone. "Detective Riley," he answered. "Detective, this is Dr. Anya Sharma from Othram. We have early results on the Castiglioni samples." Riley held his breath. The air in the room suddenly felt thick and heavy with the ghosts of 40 years. "Go on, doctor." "We've successfully developed a complete family tree from the unknown male DNA. After a lot of work with family tree databases and websites, we have a strong match. It's been confirmed by 3 separate family DNA comparison tests." Riley squeezed his eyes shut for a moment. A wave of energy rushed through him, cold and electric. "A name, doctor. Do you have a name?" "Yes, detective," Dr. Sharma said. Her voice could barely contain the excitement. "The suspect has been identified as Charles David Shaw." The name Charles David Shaw hung in the air of Detective Riley's office. It was a chilling echo across 4 decades. But as Dr. Sharma continued to speak, Riley's mind went to work. His eyes fell on Christina Castiglioni's faded photograph. The office seemed to disappear, replaced by the bitter cold of a Michigan March in 1983. To truly understand the importance of this newly spoken name, Riley's mind began to go through Christina Castiglioni's file once more. He sorted through the layers of time and tragedy. Christina Castiglioni was born on March 8, 1964. She was a bright addition to Cristoforo and Beatrice Castiglioni's home in Redford, Michigan. She had an older sister named Anna. Christina grew up in a happy home. This was very different from the quiet shyness she often showed. She was not known for loud social gatherings. Instead, she was known for her quiet hard work. Her hands were often dirty with grease as she lovingly fixed her car, a red Mustang she loved. Even though she was really good at sports, she excelled in basketball and volleyball at Redford Union High School. She mostly kept to herself. She was like a steady flame rather than a dazzling spark, but everyone who knew her agreed. Christina was genuine and kind. She was a person with quiet ambition and a rich inner world full of hopes and dreams waiting to come true. By 1983, at 19 years old, she seemed to be living life to its fullest. She was in a steady relationship with her 25-year-old boyfriend, Christopher Lindsay. She had a new job as a research clerk at the Detroit Edison Company. But her restless spirit wanted more. She wanted to see the wide-open world beyond Michigan. She talked to an Army recruiter, made a decision, and began to look forward to a future she would tragically never see. Saturday, March 19, 1983, was a bitterly cold day. A blanket of cold white snow stretched across Redford. It was Christina's day off. She spent the morning running errands for her mother with Christopher by her side. Their paths split around noon with plans for a date night later. Christina returned to her parents' home on MacArthur Road around 2 p.m. She may have taken a nap, resting before the evening's fun. As the sun began to set and snowflakes began to gently fall over the town, Christina grew restless. By 7:30 p.m., Christopher hadn't called. Impatient and maybe a little worried, she decided to go look for him. Just the week before, her beloved red Mustang, a symbol of her independence, had been sold. She had to sell it because insurance cost too much. Now, on this dangerous night, Christina set off on foot. Her only companion was the biting cold and the whispering snow. Her search began across the street at Christopher's sister's place, but he wasn't there. Hope carried her a mile further to a friend's house, only to find he wasn't there either. After watching television with her friend for a while, maybe trying to delay going home, Christina decided to walk back home. Sadly, she never made it. The next day, Sunday, brought an uneasy silence to the Castiglioni home. Beatrice and Cristoforo grew worried. A knot of worry tightened in Beatrice's stomach. They tried to tell themselves she was probably just enjoying her Sunday. But by noon on March 21st, their explanations turned into real fear. Beatrice Castiglioni reported her daughter missing to the Redford Police Department. That very evening, around 7 p.m., a chilling echo rippled through the Redford police. Several reports came in from nearby Inkster. People had seen a partially nude woman being forced into a vehicle. The description was a terrifying match for 19-year-old Christina. Officers began a frantic search in that area, but days passed with no results. Meanwhile, investigators turned to those closest to Christina. Christopher Lindsay, her boyfriend, was first on their list, and he had quite a story to tell. A story that even then felt designed to hide the truth rather than reveal it. Christopher claimed he had been delayed by a party. Around 8 p.m., he and two friends were driving back when he saw Christina standing on the 5-mile roadside near Lola Park, across from Kingsbury Party Store. She was bundled in a burgundy ski jacket with the hood of her gray sweatshirt pulled up against the drizzle. Strangely and chillingly, he did not ask his friends to stop. His excuse, Christina didn't like his two friends and he didn't want to upset her. Instead, he got out of the car a mile down the road, waiting for her to walk past while his friends bought beers. When she never appeared, he said he walked back to the last liquor store to look for her, but there was no trace. Worried, he called her home several times, but never her parents. He claimed this decision was to spare them worry. Alarm bells, silent at first, began to ring in the minds of the investigators. Christina was a responsible young woman. This wasn't an accidental disappearance. Something terrible, something evil had found her. The search continued around Redford's wooded areas. Photographs of Christina, her gentle smile a stark contrast to the growing horror, were handed out. Tips poured in. Each one was a fragile thread of hope, only to unravel into nothing. Desperate, the Redford police even asked for help from Penny Mraz, a local self-proclaimed psychic. She suggested Christina's body might be found in a dumpster in Inkster. For days, police, facing criticism, searched dumpsters and trash containers but came up empty-handed. Detective John Crete, defending their unusual methods, stated they were willing to go to any length that might help find the missing girl, no matter how ridiculous it seemed at the time. They were grasping at straws, haunted by a darkness they couldn't name. Then, 10 days after Christina Castiglioni vanished into the dark, on March 29, 1983, an alarming call reached the Redford police. A man deer hunting in the Oak Grove State Game Area, a lonely, wild stretch of land at the corner of Fawcett and Fisher Roads in Livingston County's Deerfield Township, had stumbled upon human remains. Homicide detectives rushed to the scene. The partially clothed body lay in a remote wooded area. Evidence suggested it had been placed there before the heaviest snowfall that occurred around Christina's disappearance. The body, partially covered by several inches of snow, was confirmed to be Christina Castiglioni. By then, the snow had begun to melt, revealing the terrible truth. Livingston County, usually quiet, had recently become a scary dumping ground. Between 1978 and 1983, 10 bodies had been found on its state-owned empty land. In nearly all these cases, the victims were murdered somewhere else. Their bodies were then left in the county's remote areas. These strange circumstances gave birth to a chilling theory: a serial killer. Amidst the guessing, one thing was horribly certain. Christina had been a victim of a terrible crime. Her autopsy revealed she had been sexually assaulted before being strangled to death. The medical examiner discovered unknown male DNA on her body. Though DNA technology was then in its early stages, the evidence, a tiny silent witness, was carefully saved for future testing. It could not at the time offer detectives a clear direction, but it offered a promise. Detectives remained determined, running down 80 tips and interviewing at least 20 suspects. They even questioned known sex offenders. All were eventually cleared. Interestingly, investigators found a striking, terrifying similarity to the 1981 unsolved murder of 16-year-old Kimberly Luiselle. The eerie similarities: a young woman assaulted and strangled, her body left on state-owned land in the same empty stretches of Livingston County, sent a cold dread through the investigative ranks, despite the gut-wrenching belief that the two murders were committed by the same person. Nothing definite could be found. Riley's gaze, still fixed on the faded photographs, now shifted to Kimberly Luiselle's old picture. The deep, tragic irony settled over him. The connection between Kimberly and Christina, suspected back then, had taken 40 years to finally come to life. Could this one man truly be responsible for both horrors? His mind, now focused on Shaw's name, dove into Kimberly's file, searching for echoes, for confirmations, for the truth that had escaped them for so long. Kimberly Sue Luiselle was full of youth, vibrant and full of promise. Born on March 3, 1966, her family had moved from Elkhart, Indiana to Westland, then finally settled in the quieter town of South Lyon when Kim was around 11. She was the third of William and Joanna Luiselle's 4 children. She was a striking brunette whose big brown eyes sparkled with the carefree joy of being young. At 15, standing about 5'7" and weighing around 127 pounds, she was a typical teenage girl, outgoing, popular, and brimming with dreams as clear as a summer sky. She did well in school, earned pocket money babysitting, and often spoke of wanting to be a nurse, a calling that showed her kind heart. Her passions were simple and pure: horseback riding, the beach, dancing, and the quiet thinking that came from writing poetry. Her younger sister, Cindy, 13 at the time, was her shadow, her closest friend. They spent countless hours enjoying these simple pleasures together. But summer's light can often give way to autumn's chill. Kimberly's innocence began to change when she started dating Robert, or Bob as most knew him. Bob was a few years older and lived in Whitmore Lake. Kimberly's parents, William and Joanna, saw the age difference as too big. Their disapproval became heavy, smothering the young romance. Tension, an unwelcome guest, began to live in the Luiselle home. It was a subtle disagreement that changed the normally sunny mood of their daughter. For Kimberly, Bob was not just a boyfriend. He was a whisper of independence, a step into a world her parents guarded. Then came the blow. One day, Bob delivered the news that broke Kimberly's heart in two. He was moving. His mother and two younger brothers were moving to his cousin's house on Centralia Street in Redford Township. For Kimberly, the distance was a new wall, a cruel twist of fate that threatened to end her first true romance. Determined, she clung to the relationship. Her young will forged a path where there was none. Without a driver's license, Redford, once an unreachable place, became a destination to be reached by any means necessary. She caught rides, or more dangerously, hitchhiked. School, once a priority, became a convenient excuse. She skipped for a day or two at a time, always with the promise of a call home to calm her worried parents. Wednesday, March 18, 1981, started like any other school day for sophomore Kimberly Luiselle at South Lyon High. But her heart was already somewhere else, on Centralia Street. The reasons remain unclear. Police later claimed she may have been suspended or dropped out. But her plan was clear. She sought out Cindy at the middle school next door, her big brown eyes pleading, "Come with me to Bob's house." But Cindy, ever the dutiful younger sister, said no. Their parents had recently made them promise to stay out of trouble, a promise that unknowingly saved one life and sealed another's fate. Against her mother's unspoken wishes, Kimberly hitchhiked alone to Redford. A day or two later, the world Kimberly had so desperately chased crumbled entirely. Bob, his voice perhaps a reluctant instrument of a cruel truth, told her it was over. The parental disapproval, the distance, the lack of a car, and the news that he had started dating someone else. Each reason was like a dagger twisted into her young heart. He left her at his cousin's house, driving off to work, leaving her with only the empty landscape of a broken dream. It was Friday, March 20th. Kimberly, heartbroken and lost, decided to head home. Her mother, Joanna, spoke with Bob's cousin on the phone, receiving promises that Kimberly would be safely seen off. With that fragile peace, William and Joanna left for their night shifts. Bob's younger brother, perhaps sensing the danger, walked Kimberly to the corner of 6 Mile and Centralia. There, under the uncaring gaze of the streetlights, a man in a light blue Gremlin with red fenders picked her up. Bob's brother, feeling uneasy, wrote down the license plate number, a thread of caution in an unfolding tragedy. The man dropped her off at a gas station on the corner of 8 Mile and Merriman. Someone, a brief witness, confirmed seeing her walking in that area around 6:30 that evening. This, then, was the last flicker of Kimberly Luiselle alive and walking in the cold Michigan twilight. Her parents returned home around 1 more a.m. The silence of the house screamed her absence. Their frantic call to the Green Oak Township Police Department was met with a dismissive wave. She probably just ran away, they were told. Most runaways come home, William and Joanna insisted, their voices raw with a feeling of terror. Why would she call promising to return if she planned to disappear? But their pleas, like whispers against a hurricane, were swept away. The police saw a typical teenage girl, a typical teenage rebellion. They did not see the brewing storm, the darkness gathering. Days bled into weeks. Each one was a fresh wound. Joanna haunted the window, her gaze a desperate prayer, searching for her daughter's familiar walk. William drove the streets, a ghost hunt for a glimpse of Kim with her friends, but found only emptiness. A huge amount of tears fell. Cindy, watching her parents' agony, felt their worry ripple through the house. The police guardians of safety seemed uncaring. Their promises that she would show up were a cruel mockery. 3 weeks. 3 weeks of frustrating, heartbreaking, soul-crushing stress for the entire Luiselle family. Even Bob, perhaps filled with guilt, searched endlessly. Then on April 13th, the police finally offered a suggestion, cold and detached. Go on the news. Make a public plea. A day later, on April 14th, Cindy and a friend of Kimberly's, driven by teenage hope, stopped by Bob's new home on 5 Mile and Lasher. Not long after they arrived, police cars showed up. Cindy, wearing one of Kimberly's shirts, a comfort against a growing dread, confirmed her identity. The officers asked her to wait in another room. From the kitchen area, she heard crying, sharp and unstoppable, and then her parents walked in. It was in that moment, in the cold, hard reality of their devastated faces, that Cindy learned Kimberly was murdered. A man and his wife, their dog, their innocent companion, had stumbled upon a horror in the wooded calm of Island Lake State Recreation Area near Grand River and Kensington Roads. It was Green Oak Township, just 6 miles from Kimberly's home. The state police responded immediately. They found the naked body of Kimberly Luiselle curled in the fetal position, hidden near bushes and trees a mere 26 feet from a path, 400 yards south of the carpool area. Her autopsy report said she had been dead anywhere from 4 to 6 days. None of her belongings were with her. They were never found. Police believed she was killed somewhere else, then left in this lonely, almost poetic resting place. Later that afternoon, Joanna Luiselle, her world utterly shattered, identified her daughter's body. The job of tracing Kimberly's last 3 weeks, a puzzle with too many missing pieces, now began in earnest. The police knew where she was last seen alive. But who was she with? Where had she been? These questions, like hungry ghosts, began their long haunting of the Luiselle family. The actual date and time of Kimberly's death remained unknown. Her body, exposed to the unforgiving cold of a Michigan spring, snow still on the ground, told a clinical story of horror. The autopsy revealed she had been repeatedly raped, beaten, and strangled with a belt-like object. There were no signs of starvation, a small mercy in a sea of horror. Police, now driven by the grim reality, began tracing her movements from Bob's house. Bob's brother, the guardian of a license plate number, gave them the lead on the gremlin. The man, a casual acquaintance of someone named, a person of interest, was interviewed. He claimed not to know Kimberly. He said she was just a hitchhiker he'd picked up at the gas station on 8 Mile and Merriman. Kimberly used the payphone while he went inside. The gas station employee, a brief witness, remembered Kimberly getting out of the car. He remembered saying to the man, "Looks like your girlfriend's leaving," and the man's chilling reply, "She's just a hitchhiker I picked up," followed by a casual, disgusting comment about what a nice body she had. This man was cleared as a suspect, as was Bob. But Cindy, years later, would often wonder, what were the odds that Kimberly ended up back in his car that day? Over 40 years had passed since Kimberly Luiselle, a beautiful, vibrant 15-year-old, was found beaten, sexually assaulted, and strangled to death. Her sister Cindy, now an adult carrying the weight of a lifelong promise, had started a relentless one-woman campaign to keep Kimberly's story alive, a solitary whisper against the roar of forgetfulness. Riley snapped back to the present. Dr. Sharma's voice filled his ear once more. The pieces clicked into place. The horrifying pattern was now lit up by a single name. "Detective," Dr. Sharma continued. "The DNA profile was developed from samples saved from Christina Castiglioni's crime scene. It was a complex process. The grant from Season of Justice allowed us to use forensic-grade genome sequencing. From there, our genealogists began building family trees, tracing family lines. It's like finding a single frayed thread in an ancient tapestry and painstakingly reweaving the entire pattern. The comparison was fitting. From a microscopic whisper, a ghost had been given form. Dr. Sharma then laid out the breadcrumbs of science, describing how the complete family tree, painstakingly built, had led them directly to Charles David Shaw. Was there any existing information on Charles David Shaw in any databases? Any criminal record? Riley interrupted. The question was sharp and urgent. Dr. Sharma confirmed, "Yes, detective. Once the family tree work narrowed down to Shaw, we ran his profile. He had multiple run-ins with law enforcement in Michigan from a young age. Livonia Police Department burglary in 1973, drug possession in 1977. Then in 1981, he was arrested and sentenced to 2 weeks in jail and probation for the attempted kidnapping of a woman in a Fowlerville McDonald's parking lot. And in 1982, arrested again for stealing women's shoes at a Kmart." Riley wrote quickly. Burglaries, drugs, attempted kidnapping, stealing women's shoes. A history of getting worse and worse predatory behavior. Yet nothing that had connected him to the horrors in Livingston County. Shaw, it appeared, was a long-time Livonia resident, less than 5 miles from where Christina had vanished. But the record showed no direct ties between him and either victim. The connection was purely by chance, a terrifying intersection of vulnerability and a predator's dark opportunity. The files, once filled with vague suspicions of a monster, now hummed with the chilling reality of a man. The initial breakthrough, confirmed in February 2023, was for Christina's case, but the ghost of Kimberly Luiselle still lingered. Her case, officially unsolved, pulsed with a terrifying urgency. Could this one man truly be responsible for both horrors? "Detective, Dr. Sharma's voice continued, a slight pause showing the weight of her next reveal. There's one more piece of information. Charles David Shaw died in November 1983, just 8 months after Christina's murder, an accidental death caused by sexual asphyxiation. Riley gripped the phone tighter. The air in the office grew suddenly colder, heavy with the weight of a justice that had slipped through their fingers decades ago. The killer was known but forever untouchable. After ending the call with Dr. Sharma, Riley sat for a moment, letting the name settle, the meaning wash over him. Then he picked up the phone again, dialing with a renewed sense of purpose. The first call was to Beatrice Castiglioni. Riley braced himself, practicing the words of scientific certainty. The decades of pain that would now find a name. Beatrice's voice, though weak with age, still held the steady warmth he had come to know from countless talks over the years. "Mrs. Castiglioni," Riley began, his own voice heavy. "This is Detective Riley. We have a development in Christina's case." He explained the DNA. Othram Inc., the forensic genetic genealogy. The name Charles David Shaw. On the other end, silence stretched, a vast echoing gap. Then a sharp, choked sob. Not of immediate sadness, but of a deep, shattering release. For 40 years, Beatrice had carried a silent scream in her heart. Now it finally had a name. Tears decades in the making flowed freely. "My Christina," she whispered, her voice thick with a mix of unimaginable relief and unbearable sorrow. "We finally have him, but he's gone." The bittersweet truth, a cruel irony, settled over her. Her Cristoforo had gone to his grave without this knowledge. But she at last knew her Christina would not be forgotten. In June 2023, spurred by the stunning identification of Charles David Shaw in Christina's murder, cold case investigators revisited Kimberly Luiselle's evidence. They had long preserved samples from her crime scene, microscopic remnants that in the 1980s were as hard to read as ancient symbols. Now, with the scientific revolution in their hands, they resubmitted those samples for advanced DNA testing. The wait was agonizing. Each day stretched like a tight wire. When the results finally came back, they sang the same grim song. A DNA profile matching the unknown male. DNA from Kimberly's body was entered into the National DNA Database for Criminal Justice. CODIS, the match was instant, a digital hammer blow against 40 years of silence. The CODIS system, an intricate web of genetic fingerprints, returned one name, a name that echoed with freshly revealed evil: Charles David Shaw. The evidence, once broken and silent, had found its voice, screaming the same perpetrator's name for both brutal crimes. The discovery was huge. Investigators, their initial suspicions from the 80s tragically confirmed, worked frantically, piecing together the final horrifying puzzle. Two young women, 2 years apart, bound by the same monstrous hand, and now finally linked by the undeniable truth of science. The whispers of a serial killer, long dismissed as just guessing, now roared with confirmation. The official announcement from Michigan police on September 14, 2023, was met with a stunned mix of grief, relief, and anger. Charles David Shaw, a name pulled from the darkness of a grave, was revealed as the serial predator responsible for the murders of Kimberly Luiselle and Christina Castiglioni. His criminal history, once a series of separate incidents, now painted a chilling portrait: burglary, drug possession, and attempted kidnapping, stealing women's shoes. A life spiraling into darkness, ending in the brutal rapes and strangulations of 2 innocent young women. He was a man who, despite his mental illness and complex personal struggles, had actively targeted and destroyed lives, and he had died shamefully by his own hand, decades before his terrible deeds could be brought to light. The news swept across Michigan like a cold wind, stirring conversations in diners and quiet living rooms. The public wrestled with the bittersweet nature of this justice. The killer would never face a courtroom, never feel the full force of the law, yet the truth so long buried had finally surfaced, an undeniable testament to science and relentless human dedication. It was a victory hollowed by time, yet still a victory. Detective Riley, exhausted but deeply changed, looked at the photographs of Kimberly and Christina one last time. Their eyes, once filled with the promise of youth, now held the quiet dignity of answered questions. He thought of Beatrice, her unwavering hope, and Cindy, her lifelong crusade. They had waited, endured, and refused to let their daughters become mere footnotes in forgotten files. This case, solved not by a confession or a living arrest but by the persistent whispers of DNA, showed a deep truth. Justice may be delayed, sometimes by decades, sometimes by death, but it cannot be silenced forever. As long as someone remembers, and as long as science continues its relentless march forward, the healing for the Castiglioni and Luiselle families was a journey only just beginning, one that would be forever touched by the ache of what could have been. Christina's parents, though aging, had held on to hope with a fierce grip. Beatrice, at least, had lived to hear the name. To finally rest with the truth, Cindy, Kimberly's sister, could now tell her sister's story, not as an unsolved mystery, but as a testament to a life taken too soon and a killer finally named. The woods of Livingston County, once a silent partner to horror, now held a bittersweet secret revealed. The long silence was broken. The echoes of the code had finally spoken. Thanks for being here and listening. Don't forget to hit the bell for our latest stories. Stay safe and take care with your loved ones.